priorities, and you do have in front of you what we've provided for others to see. And the first thing right out of the chute is the obvious, and that is the priority for me, for our board, for all of us, are our students. And I think if we keep them as the main thing in our thinking and our conversations, it'll serve us well. Employees, I want you to understand, as I've just said to you, you are a priority to us. There are no conversations about picking and choosing between you and other things. We picked you, and we're supporting you, and we will continue to support you. So this is about you as a priority to us. Our schools are a priority to us. Our campuses need attention. Our buildings need attention. We've expanded by the purchase of a building, and so how we serve you, what your buildings look like, and what our children get to walk into, obviously are priorities for us. Everything that I'm sharing here is a factual piece of information. There is nothing here to try to persuade the board and or you in any sort of direction. Under the law, I am compelled board members to make sure that before you make critical decisions, and this is a very important decision before you, it is my obligation and responsibility to make sure that we're thinking of everything in the context of what we can share with you, so that when you make decisions, those are very thoughtful decisions in the context of everything else. But may I again say that there is nothing here that says that because we've already done some things, let's not do anything else. Because we need to expand a building, let's not do anything for employees. This is nothing more than trying to give a big picture of where we are. And so I share with you that in FY16, we were fortunate enough that our legislators passed a 4% pay increase. You as a board, we as a school district, took on an additional $2,880,000 above what the state sent to us for that 4%, because we do pay above the minimum salary schedule. So you participated in a pay increase for our employees to the tune of $2.88 million. Yay for yesterday, October 1 came with a 2.5% salary increase. And again, because we pay above the minimum salary schedule, our board assumed, our school district assumed, an additional $1.5 million because we pay above the minimum salary schedule. So putting that in context, the additional salary commitment that we've made in the last 4 years to our employees is $4,680,000. I want to also remind you that we do all we can to make sure when employees take on additional duties and responsibilities that we acknowledge that with appropriate supplements. And so as Tina shared with us at our board hearings, and as you have approved, FY19 comes with a supplemental salary amount of $2.8 million. I'll put that in context for you. In 2018, we paid 2.9, so we're 100,000 less. However, if you will recall, we increased those salary supplements. The difference is, even though we increased them, we have a number of additional people who, at an experience level, or at a zero experience, and so they're coming in lower in terms of what they would be making. Tina also shared with us in our FY19 budget that 84% of our budget is allocated to salaries and benefits. And just as a point of reference, 65% of our employees are certificated and 35% of our employees are classified. You do have before you, board members, a proposed classified salary and benefits schedule that came from the committee. That proposal in its totality is $1.1 million, unless you give consideration to CMP, which is another $400,000. So it really is a 1.5, but let me back the CMP piece out. CMP $400,000, that will be covered by federal funds, and it'll also be offset by a decrease in employees in the CMP department. And it is also offset by an increase that we have had in a la carte sales. So I just want to be clear about why no money from general funds would need to come out to pay for CMP. It will be offset by those other areas. I also mentioned to you an unknown here. In being a part of School Superintendents Association and having opportunity to have Dr. Eric Mackey, State Superintendent, addressing us, he has shared with us the real possibility of additional salary and benefit increases that likely will come to us. There are no guarantees and promises, but it's likely to come during the 2019 legislative session. How much that will be and if it will be are the unknowns, but I do share with you that at a state level there are thoughts and conversations that likely there will be additional salary increases from the 2019 legislative session. And then I also want to share with you that our River Chase Career Connection Center, the salaries and benefits to sustain that program will run us about $500,000. I also will share with you, board members, that we, and you have it in your notebook, HR provided you some data about turnover in our departments. Because one of the things that individuals have shared with us is our classified employees are leaving us to go to other school districts where the pay is higher. And so if you'll look in the notebook, and I believe it's behind tab 3, do you all have your notebook? And we can look at that together. So if you look behind that tab, you'll see just a 3-year analysis from 15-16 to 17-18. We do not have our 18-19 numbers there for you, though we can provide those. But you'll see that in some departments we've added employees, in some departments we had positions that could be filled, but we postponed the filling of those positions until maybe a year or two. But you do have information before you. I will, just for transparency for those who are in the audience, 2017-18 for transportation, we had 25 of 165 employees who left service with us, which was a 15% turnover in transportation. In CMP, we had 22 out of 118 employees who discontinued service, or 19%. Custodians, out of 98 custodians, 20 discontinued service, giving us 21% of turnover. Operations, of 37 individuals, 4 left operations, 11% turnover. And secretaries, of 60 employees, 5 discontinued with us, which is 8%. And of bookkeepers, there were 23 employees, of which 4 of those individuals left us in 17-18, or 17%. And this is information that I felt like you needed to have so that you understand indeed what that turnover rate is looking like for us. I will also share with you that, assuming you approve this evening 3 positions, names of individuals that will come to the table. One's a mental health specialist. Board members, please remember that was generated from our mental health task force. We need more focus on mental health. That position will be before you this evening with a person's name. Curriculum coordinator will be before you, as will the Director of Equity and Educational Initiatives. That position being very heavy on helping us analyze data, keeping data in front of principals and the superintendent so that we're making good decisions based on data and not suspicions, and also helping us address the green factors and the achievement of unitary status. And so you see that those salaries, those 3 salaries, are $272,356. I want to talk about capital outlay and just remind you of some of the things that we've done up to this point that were priorities for us, and that is FY17. We did address our turfs and track in our school district, and we committed $2.9 million to the replacement of turf and track. FY18, we purchased the River Chase Middle School campus for $4.2 million. We've committed another $5.4 million to Hoover High School's band room, and they just keep growing and keep getting better. We're excited about the turnover of that building to us in short order. And then I just want to remind you that there always are the unforeseens. And this last year we had a couple of those. At Spain Park, we had a floor that buckled on us in the gymnasium, and it was $97,000 that we didn't anticipate. And then the Gwynn Foundation, as you may also remember, was compromised, not unsafe, but we had to address it before it became unsafe, and that was another $148,770. At a special call board meeting a few weeks ago, last week I guess it was, a few days ago, you approved the renovation of the River Chase Career Center at $13.462 million. As we talked about during the budget hearings and looking at capital outlay, there's always the projects to be done with roofing and with paving. I will say to you it is an absolute priority for us to address Berry Middle School. We need 16 to 18 classrooms on that campus just as quickly as we can get the shovel in the dirt. And that's going to be to the tune of about $7.5 million. We hope to open that in August of 2020. Bluff Park, we have also had conversations about part of that campus that is I'm going to use the term compromised, that the buildings are becoming more of a liability to us than asset, and portions of that need to be removed from the older campus. This is not a conversation about removing the old Bluff Park original part of that school, but we also are growing in Bluff Park and are growing in terms of maybe some of those homes that were owned by older families, newer families moving in with children, and that population of students is growing. So we're looking in short order of needing to put about $5 million into Bluff Park. I'm going to talk about watch for a minute because I think there's some schools right now that we can watch. We did an impact study, and based on that impact study, here were some of the schools that we thought in the next 3 to 5 years we were probably going to have to invest money in and add wings to. But at this point, we're fairly comfortable to just call these watch schools and not schools in short order to put money into. And one is River Chase. We think once the grandfathering rotation is over, that school is going to probably stabilize and may not need to add additional rooms. Simmons is much larger than it has been, so we're just going to keep watching Simmons. Gwynn was a concern for us at one point. We are not at a capacity where we're alarmed. We might have to kind of rethink inside that building how to organize some things. Hoover High School is obviously on watch. As we know, we have a very large population of students there, and I rarely go out that somebody doesn't say, when are you going to build that third high school, or please don't build that third high school. You know, lots of opinions about whether that should or should not happen, and our board and our public's going to need to have conversations about that as we move forward. And we've also had some conversations about a fine arts center. I am a proponent of that. I wish we could put the shovel in the dirt for that right now, because I think it's absolutely needed in our community. You know, whether that's a city commitment, a school district commitment, a collaborative commitment, I don't know. There are lots of conversations to be had there, but I do believe there's passion on this board and in our school district in terms of addressing the fine arts piece for our students. I want you to just also remember that we have bond payments before us. We owe $163,320,000. And I just also want to remind you that this year, this fiscal year, FY19, that bond payment will increase $800,000 for us. And so, again, please understand, board members, what I've tried to do is to not say, I'm not saying to you, I need you to pick between people and stuff and things. That's not what this is about. But my obligation to you is to say to you, let's look at the big picture. There's lots of stuff happening. Our employees are absolutely a priority for me and for you, and I know that. There are future needs that we all need to be thinking about, And so to the extent we can all give each other guidance and accept input, I want to do that as it relates to those priorities. So thank you for allowing me to share that, and let me just thank you because I know you've been very thoughtful about this whole process that's before you with a request from our committee, and as I have been. And I turn it over to you for any thoughts or questions you might have about where we are.
Board, any conversations you'd like to have, and you can direct questions to the audience if there happens to be an employee here you would like to ask. Any comments?
I would like to just say something up front to reiterate something that Dr. Murphy has said about our employees being a priority to us. Retaining and attracting people is a conversation that we need to have on an ongoing basis. We can have great facilities, we can have great programs, but it's the people who are in those facilities and running those programs that mean the most. We would not have the programs and the facilities. It's the most important thing to have the right people in place and to attract and retain quality employees is very important. So I just wanted to make that statement. I appreciate all of the committee that put together the salary schedule, Ms. Hancock and her staff. We appreciate everything that you have done and put forth. All the calls and emails at midnight saying, hey, can we see this report this way or that way? And you did not fail to deliver, and we appreciate that as well.
Matter of fact, Tina's been at a couple of day conference, and we were still sending questions and making requests, and she didn't miss a beat. So appreciate her doing that.
I think each one of us, again, once this information is public, we can at least, we understand we each other have questions. So without naming the board members here, each one of us has probably run a spreadsheet on their own. I can show you mine. It's just the logic as to how we look at it and try to understand it. I just want to repeat, until we understand it enough to vote on it, I think everyone deserves us understanding what we're voting on. So it would be my thought, if the superintendent agrees, that we will try to vote on this in November. So I think by then the staff is, I'm surprised that they're still working for us after all the questions, and I'm sure they were pretty mundane. But anyway, it's a lot of information, and I think I've been on the board almost probably 4.5 years. I think I had one work session in the first 4, and this is the 3rd or 4th, and we may have another work session. It's too important a topic. It's too important just to say yes and not study it, and it's certainly too important to say no on any part or all without you giving the attention that you deserve. So please be patient and let us ask our questions and get them answered. Okay, we have a regularly scheduled board meeting at 5:30. It is almost 5 o'clock now. I hope you all will still be here and join us for the public meeting at 5:30 this week.
We might not do that. Okay. We didn't realize that's what you were asking.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
We're not.
Let me share as Ms. Bauman's doing that. I have provided for you board members. I know that you all have taken tables and charts and looked at this data. What I have provided for you in a notebook are several documents. First of all, you have the salary schedule committee recommendations. That's document 1 for you. I had asked about taking a look at the data in a different fashion, which is document number 2. There's turnover percentage, the support staff turnover percentage is document 3. Document 4 was also a request that came forward in terms of looking at this proposal, if it were not in its totality, what if it were less than? So there was some conversations there. You have that document. There's salary schedule comparisons. If there was a flat rate offered across the board, what if these our classified employees were given a 2.5, for example, as a flat rate across the board, in addition to they've already received a 2.5, and also comparing to that if there was a flat rate of a 1.5. So there have been lots of questions about, let's look at the recommendation from the committee, but hey, what if we looked at it this way or that way? Again, I don't think that's to be interpreted that there's no regard or respect for what the committee has presented, but I do believe that you all certainly are entitled to say, let's look at it, and let's make sure that our questions are answered.
Well, and I'll say I think that's why it has been complicated for us, because a lot of things were trying to be done at the same time within this proposal. Extending the salary schedule through for more than 10 years, I think, was a very important piece of this. That I think was done well and gone out, but then we also were trying to increase some base salaries to be competitive with other school districts. This is all based on my conversations with Michelle and Tina, and I think then on top of the 2.5% get in there, the timing of that, very complicated to look at. I like this, the way that you put this out here, because it breaks it out by, I kind of think, the 2.5% is done. I don't really think we need to even talk about that anymore. That's in here, and so we should start there, and then looking at it this way. What we really need to look at is what is the proposed increase that is not a state mandated, we're increasing by X percent each year. So I think this was very helpful, laying it out this way. I kind of did, I love spreadsheets, so I made my own. And I tried to go through and do the same thing, looking at what was increased in the base salaries, which positions, because they, didn't go, everybody didn't get the same percent across the board. What percent in the first 10 steps, because there were some increases for some of the positions, not for all of them, yet again, so that was a little confusing. And then how did that break out into the 27-year extension? So kind of, I thought about it in 3 different pieces, is kind of the way I think about it. It all goes together, but there's 3 different kind of things going on, is the way I looked at it. So I think you're putting it this way was helpful. I think if we just kind of take that 2.5%, not really factor that into our thinking anymore, because that's been in all the spreadsheets, so it's been kind of hard to think about it that way, and kind of start with this, looking at it this way. I think that's a good way to do that.
Yeah. And let me mention the 2.5, which was a place where I kind of got stuck.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I think you're exactly right, Ms. Madonna. There was so much happening in this process. So after laying this out in a way that made sense in my head, and I think we've all done that, we've all laid out our own charts and a way that our heads work. But here's what I do understand now that I did not understand earlier, and that is if we only give the 2.5% on what is our employees are entitled to legislatively, and we only give the difference and not put the 2.5% on the proposed difference, then our employees are still trying to play catch up still. Because for those school districts who already have a salary above ours, as of yesterday, they got 2.5 on that salary. So in the absence of us providing the 2.5 on the requested increase, we still lag behind. So I had that slow moment in time, and I'm acknowledging to you, I had that slow moment in time. But once I laid that out, and you might go, duh, what did you not get in the beginning? But we all process at a different point. I get that. I get it doesn't help us help our employees play catch up in a comparative way if you leave them behind on the difference of pay. It's got to be that difference times 2.5. So I do want to acknowledge that.
We're trying to bridge or close the gap.
To close the gap, the 2.5.
That makes total sense.
Yeah,
That's part of the delay I had too, because again, it started prior to the state raise. So we're looking at comparable columns with multiple districts, multiple categories of employees. So you're trying to understand the increase within each one, plus we start out doing steps. So now you'd say, what's the big deal? Just multiply times 1.025 and you're there. But when you've got your mind here, so it's just a lot of conversion to get the numbers understandable. Ms. McDonald did a fantastic job making a spreadsheet a whole lot simpler than I could do. The same thought process to try to understand in our mind so that we can make a decision.
I'm sorry.
Okay, now here's my question. When I was a teacher, you know, you've got, and I know now you have that fiscal year of October to October. Well, that was yesterday, October 1st. If we voted on it tonight, or we voted on it in November, what's the difference? What does that do if we approved it? How does that factor in for that year? It just starts the day that, it starts the month that we approve it.
Recommend, that's right.
Okay.
And I will say, is Steve in the room? Steve Marshall,
Yes.
may not be here yet. Oh, Steve, and I did talk to Steve this morning to say, you know, Steve, what does this look like in terms of, and I didn't hear you use the term retroactive it back, but let me address that. You know, if the board approved this next month in November, would they say that's to be effective October 1, November? We're gonna start this January 2019. Is that the
Would
question?
that be our prerogative to do
well,
so?
that's my
It is your
question.
prerogative to do
And,
so.
but my question is, how does that change anyone's, does that matter as far as someone's retirement? Or does that matter as far as someone's year to year? Does that matter?
That would
Yes,
change.
exactly.
Okay.
That would, because that $1.1 million that would be, that I did budget in the general fund for FY19,
Would be less.
it would be less than that because you would be short 1 month of that increase.
So for every month past October that this is not implemented, that's a month less those employees have that percentage or that proposed amount of money of comparable catch-up.
But you wouldn't miss an anniversary date. Maybe that's what you're asking. I want to ask you anyway. You're not going to get caught because of the fiscal year, the school year being at different times. You'd be getting, depending on what happened, a 12th of the year. If in fact it was.
12 months were budgeted.
Just the contribution at the time.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if I could attempt to clarify, to your question, Mr. Kendrick, it is the prerogative of the board to say if you approved it in November, we want this effective November, or we want to retroactive this back to the beginning of the fiscal year, which would be October 1, or we want this January 29th. That is the call of the board. It does have an impact on employees because every month that passes that it's not approved, that's less money that they would be getting those months. You know, every month that passes, a 12th of that money they didn't get.
That's what my question is.
Yes.
They'll miss a
I'm
12th
trying
of it
to-
every month.
I'm looking at it as in term, you know,
That's it.
hey, I taught for 30 years. Hey, I taught for 25 years. Hey, I worked in CMP for 15, whatever it is. The longer we go, the longer people would have to work.
No.
To make up that money? No.
Oh,
It's
well,
a year.
To make up money.
Yeah.
But not in terms of getting to a retirement. You know, after 25 years is 25 years. What all of us want to do is to have the very highest. I'm
I'm having a
cutting you
hard
off, I'm
time
sorry.
getting out my question.
I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. I'm just I'm trying to, since everything started October 1, I'm trying to figure out how much that really affects. How many people does that really affect? Like, should we vote on this October 1? Should we have, or does it really matter?
If we make it retroactive to
Are we
October
going to
1,
retrofit it? That's what I'm
really
asking.
doesn't matter when, I mean, specifically when you vote on it, it goes back, right? I mean,
Does it?
is it cleaner
It
to
doesn't
start
go
it
back
at the
unless we
beginning
tell
of
it.
the
It is much
fiscal year?
cleaner and
That's what I'm
Steve,
asking.
Is it cleaner? to
Steve,
do
may
it
I just pick on you for a moment, because this was something I thought we'd probably discuss, and you and I had this
It
conversation,
did.
and
I mean,
certainly
it's
Michelle.
your decision, yes, it could be retro,
That's what I'm
if that's what you decided. Yes, it might take a tad longer for us to make those calculations,
In other words, it might not come in that next month's check.
but it just takes a little additional time to do that difference,
It's
but it
manual
could be
rather
done.
than.
That's what I was asking.
Yeah.
It,
Can that be done?
It's a manual
Is that
process.
beneficial whether or not? Okay. Or do you just work longer? I'm trying, I know what I'm asking.
You don't have to work long. But if you are looking at your retirement and you're wanting that, more higher salary for 3 years, then yes, it does make a difference.
That's what I'm asking, for retirement.
Yes.
For- For tier 1 employees, your
And
highest
tier two.
3. For tier 2, your highest 5. So most of our employees perhaps are tier 1, so everybody's looking to get the highest 3 years as they near their retirement, which makes sense for them and their families. Unless you're tier 2 and now it's gone out to 5. Is that right, Steve, or did I say it wrong?
Well, I just wanted to add to that, just remember, as a tier 1, your retirement is based on the highest 3 years of your last 10,
Of your last
paid July through June.
Which is why a lot of.
So
schools
if you
do
did vote and you did decide to retro, you would still get that amount within that July through June period, which would increase or affect, positively affect your retirement.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes total sense to me.
Did that help? Yep. I think I kept cutting you off. I wanted to answer before you asked me, right? I
No, it's fine.
apologize.
I should have clarified it. I'm really kind of talking retirement.
Yeah.
So I've got just a couple other things. One, just to make a point that some people may not realize, when we do get, and please, anyone, I say it, correct me if I'm wrong, I do not get offended. I'm trying to learn all this as well. That when the state does give a raise throughout the years, whatever it looks like, a lot of times benefits go up as well, and so the people aren't actually getting 2.5%. We're not even sure if 2.5% is going to be a net raise.
But we don't control that, do
But we don't control it. No, we do not. It's just a point that I felt needed to be made, because I know there's been a couple of different years that benefits have gone up and pay hasn't gone up, and guess what? Everyone's paycheck is smaller. Mhm. But let's talk bottom line, because I know that is something that is big on everybody's mind. The total cost, can we afford it? What does that look like? We already know the number. I know that this was included in our strategic plan as objective number 2. And I also know that it was included in our future needs moving forward on something that we are now. It wasn't quite as much in our future needs as it is coming out to be. But with that said, I do know that we and our lovely finance department has done an amazing job at cutting costs where they can. So for instance, and there again, correct me if I misspeak here, that like Hoover High School and Spain Park's track, we had that money, we set it aside, we put it in savings, our reserve, for those projects, but we actually didn't pull it out of savings to pay for it. We used that fiscal year's money to pay for that. So that's just one example of what they've been able to do. They're very frugal at this, and I love that. So, I need her right now.
Okay, sorry. I'll wait my turn. I'll wait my turn.
Well, with that, I was just gonna see if there was anything that Tina would like to, Ms. Hancock would like to, speak to on that, or anything else as far as this process. Is there any?
Yeah, let me just say, we did put a line item in the budget for this to show that we could sustain this for FY19. One thing I wanna say is, we had an increase in foundation funds that were allocated of 2.6 million this year, which I've explained to some of you how I budget people, and it is always beneficial statewide for you to put as many people in foundation budget, and I may get complicated if I am, just say stop, as possible, because statewide, when the legislature looks at that, they can say, okay, we're paying this many benefit packages out of foundation, we might need to increase foundation. So this year, we did receive $2.6 million increase from last year in foundation. And I have all the custodians, all the bookkeepers, secretaries, registrars, the River Chase, the new people at River Chase Career Center. I have most of all that is in that foundation budget. So that budget covered that 2.5 increase that we did receive. So what we're looking at also for FY20 is it's probably the most aggressive foundation budget we have looked at, and I know some of you got those emails from the State Department that we've seen since 2008. And I know after talking, Andy Craig came and talked to our group as well, all the CFOs in the state, that he was going to present a very aggressive budget. The OCE, which you all know is other current expense, which helps pay for those benefit packages for our support staff and our support staff. They are really looking to be aggressive in funding that this year, or FY20. So going forward for FY20, I feel very confident we've made that happen. We can sustain this as well. Unless we go into proration, foundation funds are not cut. So we only, you may see some flatter years, but they usually do go up somewhat. Not every year goes up as much as others, as you know. But some of the things that we were able to do in this budget was we did budget for all those new positions. We also budgeted, and again, we budgeted this and had a positive recurring expenditure budget. With River Chase, we knew we took that out of savings. But we budgeted 9 additional teaching units that were allocated from the state, or almost 9, the River Chase Career Center salaries, 2 mental health support staff, 4 additional operations staff, 10 additional bus drivers, a curriculum coordinator, director of equity and education initiative, and I think there was one more central office person that we had budgeted for. So we were able to get all that in this year's budget with a positive recurring expenditure budget. So the only thing that it looks negative on, or that we've touched our savings for, is River Chase Career Center. We did include the bus fuel for transporting students to River Chase in that budget. We did include the utilities for River Chase Career Center in that budget. Those are some of the things that were on the future needs that we were able to accommodate. I know we had roofing on there, and Dr. Murphy's already mentioned that. We allocate money for roofing every year in our capital outlay funds. We allocate money for paving every year in our capital outlay funds that we receive from the state. So the only thing that we did not cover in our future needs in the FY19 budget was River Chase Career Center. So we were able to accommodate all those future needs in this year's budget, and that is also including flat funding for taxes, which we have been seeing about a $2 million increase in our ad valorem taxes each year, but again, I budgeted flat, and that was with flat revenues.
Ms. Bowman, what was that future needs number when we did this?
1 million.
1 million? Dr. Murphy, it seems like, looking at your turnover percentages in tab number 3, in 17-18, we lost 67 transportation, CNP, and custodians. The way I understand the proposal, it's a little all or none. Am I understanding that the right way? Either we do it for everybody or we don't do it for anybody?
Well, the board has significant discretion here again. It's the decision of the board whether you accept the proposal as presented, whatever way I recommend it to you, you vote it up or down. That could include a recommendation that says, I'd like to recommend the proposal as was presented to you. You all could amend that at this table by saying, we've looked at this and we want to revisit this category of employees to this category of employees, or I think rather than getting 6% pay increase in the last 3 years of employment, we ought to pull that up and spread it. We could probably walk every one of these categories and all agree there was something we might have done differently. I think the bigger question on the table is the presentation or what has been proposed to us, is that what we want to do? Do we want to walk through that in every employee category through each of those steps to visit that way? Or even though we might have done some things differently, if we had all been at the table in the original putting up together of this, would we have done something differently? Probably yes. Does the board want to go category for category, step by step at this point? You have that discretion.
But can I just add, in terms of when we took before, that whenever, like for instance, the base salaries were increased, some weren't. In addition, the step 10, I'll just call it, looking at that, were increased. It was all done compared to something. A lot of it we have notes for. I mean, a lot of this just wasn't done kind of willy-nilly. It was done to compare to a competitive school district salary. If we were worried about, like, for the turnover percentages for bookkeepers or something like that, for instance. I just wanted to understand to make sure that it was all done with some sort of purpose. It wasn't just kind of a random, let's increase that 5%, let's increase that 4%. I think it's important to, because that just came out in our conversation.
Right, you're correct. We
Okay.
did compare, all of the Birmingham metro area and then some other districts within the state that were comparable to size in the state of Alabama, and what we were trying to do is, looking at our turnover, knowing some of us knew our turnover rates, that we were losing people. We wanted to be comparable because we do get people who say, I'm leaving because I get this in another district or I get more money in another district. So we wanted to be comparable. Those areas that we did not increase steps 1 through 10, we were already comparable. Those that we did increase, we were not comparable. And we really, I know it came out on AL.com that teachers are the highest, Hoover teachers are the highest paid in the state. When we looked at the support staff, some were at the very low end. So basically all we did was bring people, those salary schedules up to the midpoint.
The low end of the state?
The low end of the districts that we looked at
Mhm.
over in this area.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, there's some fairly wide ranges, so
Yes.
it's hard to, some have very small ranges, some have some bigger ranges, so I know, because, we looked at that, okay.
Yeah, and let me just add to that, that's why we, as the committee, we met so many times so that we could take each area individually and look at that department and salaries so that we could be comparable on each actual salary schedule that we looked at as we were going through the process, so that we didn't take, I think that we voted on that the very first meeting was, do we want to take and just say a percentage, or do we want to look at everything individually? And we voted to look at everything individually and look at every single step individually.
That's the only way it would have worked.
Yeah.
Just by doing it at a percentage, you're not
Yeah, we weren't going.
you're not closing the gap. You're not trying to make yourself competitive by doing it that way. You had to go schedule by schedule.
And our struggle truly is there are some school districts that may be lower than we are year 1, but by year 5, they've increased our salary step 5 by $3,000. So we've done all of that training, we've spent thousands of dollars, personnel, registration fees, sending them to conferences for travel, and then they leave us after 5 years. That can be anywhere from a $5,000 per employee to a $20,000 per employee loss. So we do find that, yes, we may even bring them in, we can attract them and we can hire them, but then we can't retain them. So at years 5 or years 10, they're leaving us to go somewhere else.
Board, we probably need any more questions because we got to try to stay on schedule for the board meeting.
Talk about this in the next
Yeah.
hour if we need to.
Okay.
Yes, we've been asked to stay on schedule. this will conclude the work session. Again, thank you so much for coming. Thank you for your input, and most of all, thank you for the job you do. This particular opportunity has been more taxing on hours of sleep and worry. You know, the first thing you get up in the morning, something's on your mind. This has been there for a while, and it should be. But thank you for being patient. We'll meet at 5:30 for our